Hello and welcome to the season 2 finale of Stranger Nerds here on the Jersey Nerds Productions. I'm Mitchell Lee alongside Tommy Grant, Nick Izzo, Connor Vandermark, not able to join us for this one, but he is here in spirit. No, he's not dead, but he's just not with us currently, but he'll be back for season 3. Season 2, guys, it's finally coming to a close, and the rough grades of this particular season have not been as strong as season 1. However, the last episode that we talked about, with the second best average of any episode that we've talked about so far, save for the finale of season 1. So, gotta imagine that we're expecting big things for the finale of season 2.
And I was upset that I was not able to make it for that episode because that definitely was my favorite episode of the season. But yeah,
Of the series so far, it's your highest grade.
I know I have more favorite episodes in season 3 and 4, but up to this point, it was definitely one of the highlights of the show. But yeah, I'm just excited to get into season 3 at this point. Season 2, like you and I have said, Mitchell, it's just the lull of the show. And I know it's definitely been reflected in not just ours, but even Connor and Nick's scores. It's just, it's good, just wasn't there. But season 3, I'm very excited to see Connor and Nick's reactions to just the shenanigans that goes down and how the whole tone of the show kind of changes. Because we definitely do see a whole
Well,
shift in focus.
Connor gave the last one a 9.65, which was his second highest grading for
Wow.
the show so far. Nick, yet to get past that 9.2. It's just kind of plateaued there. He's given 3 9.2s, not gotten past that mark. I was
Oof.
not quite as impressed. 8.62, not even my highest grade of the season so far. However, things can always change, and we've got a finale coming up, and the last finale is our highest graded show so far. So let's just go ahead. Let's dive right in. Season
Yeah.
finale. Tommy, take it away.
We pick up right at the start of pretty much the ending from the last episode where we have 11 kind of making her entrance and Mike just they embrace. Mike's still kind of in shock of like, holy shit, like she's here, she's alive. And it quickly shifts from happy and excited to looking at Hopper and realizing, wait, you've been lying to us this entire time. And Mike has some choice words for Hopper. And we definitely see Mike kind of unleashing all those built up emotions he's had for this past year, thinking she's been dead. And now realizing the one person they should be able to trust has been lying to all of them for this entire year. And I
I
understand
like
both
that
sides.
Hopper let Mike get that
Yeah.
out of his system. I thought that
Because
was
Hopper
a real
understood.
good move on his part.
I
Yes.
I think it's also come to play with how Hopper's kind of come into more of a dad role. So he's been more understanding of teenage emotion and kind of understanding like, hey, I need to let these kids vent for a second because we just literally flip their worlds upside down. Not to throw a pun in there, but yeah, it was a funny scene of just Mike just quickly shifting her straight to Hopper and just like, you son of a bitch. But
Honestly, it
I
kind of
also
made me
never got the
dislike him.
vibe that Mike really thought he was dead.
yeah, dislike who, Nick? Hopper or Mike?
Mike, like, he annoys the shit out of me. I gotta be honest.
Well,
Like, many,
this is no spoiler,
many.
but I have been very vocal about this. But Mike's character takes a very quick shift downwards in season 3 for me, and it's definitely just that teenage angst that they throw into his character specifically, and
never
I
quite recovers. I think
no, it
season 1
doesn't.
and season 2 peak Mike, it goes downhill.
Yeah, it you're gonna hate him a lot more next season.
It's just like
Yeah.
he is like the epitome of like the first word that comes to mind for me is like ornery. Like he's just
It's a good
annoying.
word.
Yeah.
Like he's just I don't know. Like, I know he means well. He's a good friend. His character is not bad, but just like just him talking and like his temper tantrums, it's just like, dude, just calm
It
down.
gets worse.
Come on, like it's just like Jesus.
But shifting over from Mike, we have 11 kind of, seeing all of her friends again. It's funny how the first thing she recognizes is Dustin's teeth, which Dustin has been very proud of this season. And of course, he does his little, I don't even know what you call it noise, but
I can't make it. My teeth.
that's close enough. But yes,
He rolled his R.
That just sounded like Godzilla taking a nap.
a
Yeah.
little Godzilla Chewbacca combination.
It was a
Not
Yeah.
great.
Is that what you were looking for?
It's close enough.
Not really, no.
Oh, okay.
But to save our viewers
But
listening to more of our attempts to make this noise, we'll acknowledge we know exactly what we're referring to.
Max is just trying to be friendly. Like, hey, I'm Max. And 11's like,
Ooh.
yeah, bitch, I know.
And the fucking cold shoulder 11 pushes off. And it's funny because you know what? For someone who's been in complete isolation for a year, you would think you might be open to, talking to new people and, having an actual girl to talk to. But it just goes straight to, you talk to my boyfriend. You are dead to me.
Try to take my man, bitch.
You ride your skateboard around him? Not today.
Yeah.
And
no.
I feel bad for Max because she definitely is trying to put her best foot forward and, just be friendly, and just 11 just wants nothing to it and just go straight to Joyce, the mom figure of the group.
Sorry, I just read on the show notes. 11 and Joyce go see Will, who does his best acting while sleeping.
You're welcome for that. I thought you'd appreciate it because I figured we would do a little bit
I
more ratting
do.
on
I
that.
do.
I was really hoping Connor would be on this for this purpose as well, because I thought he would get a good kick out of that note. But it's true. The best acting he's done in this show is while he's pretending to be asleep, possessed.
I'm glad I'm not alone on this. I appreciate people being in my corner.
And I'm being a little extra critical for the sake of the show, but watching it so many times, I never really minded it. But now that we're kind of really diving into the show and analyzing it, yeah, it's just it's bad.
Yeah,
but
now that you have 4-page show notes, you're putting grades on things, you're reanalyzing things.
I got
It's hard to avoid.
Much as I love the show, I have to find reasons to criticize it a little bit, and Noah Schnapp just happens to be a perfect scapegoat for that. So, hence the notes of how bad Noah Schnapp is. But 11 and Joyce have a little conversation, basically like talking about the gate, and 11 mentions like, I think I can close it. And she kind of has a little like personal one-on-one of like Joyce being desperate again of like, can you help Will? Almost kind of back to the same conversation they had back in season 1 where they first met. But it's just a quick little scene. And then we get a little flash to the gate where we just see a whole army of little mini demodogs, as Dustin likes to call them. And that kind of sets the tone for the whole episode of, we're going to try and find a way to save Will, and 11's got to find a way to close the gate and get past this massive army of demodogs. And Nick, what were you expecting? What were we expecting to play out with these demodogs?
What was I expecting?
I mean, the stakes were high. I mean, last episode we literally saw Bob get ripped to pieces.
Yeah. I was sad that excuse me, that you were not here to talk about the great Samwise Gamgee and his untimely death. But yeah, I guess going into this one, it was a thought that like, they would spread out into the rest of Hawkins, and then people would find out what was going on. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I can't say I really had any other expectations other than to have the group
Yeah,
fight
and,
them,
and
and whatnot.
now having seen this episode, I was curious. Kind of a quick little tangent, but like, had they not been able to close the gate, do we think we would have just seen Demodogs like running rampant like across Hawkins? Like, would have been just like unleash hell kind of deal, or do we think we would have just kept seeing them kind of doing little sneak attacks here and there and just picking off easy prey at night? Because with how many there were, like we never really get an idea of what the Mind Flayers' actual intentions and goals were. Because 11 manages
What
to close the gate.
what are your ambitions?
Well, we can't. We don't get
Well,
any
on my
bad guy.
vision board,
We never get a bad guy monologue because it's literally a shadow monster possessed by Noah Schnapp who doesn't give us any information. So we have to just kind of ponder and come up with use our imagination, figure out what the hell he was trying to do. And that's the one thing I've always wondered is what was the actual plan had 11 not shown up and closed the gate. But that's just my little food for thought there. But to get into the episode, I think we'll knock off this quick little storyline and just get it out of the way. And that's Billy starting to play a little bit of a role in the show finally, but in a much more creepy way. And Nick, you kind
hey,
of
he
mentioned
wasn't creepy.
Nick kind of mentioned it before we started recording,
Miss
but
Wheeler's the one.
they just have a very weird connection right off the bat. And it's kind of goes into play with what Jonathan and Nancy talked about last season, where he mentions like the whole how Mrs. Wheeler kind of just settled for Mr. Wheeler and it's like a bored housewife type personality, and we kind of see that flesh out a little bit in the fact that like she's taking a bath, reading a romance novel, and all of a sudden this young stud, as you will, kind of just shows up at the door, and she's in her bathrobe, and he's flirting with her right off the bat, and she does not hesitate to just reciprocate it. And it's a weird little story plot that they thrown in there, and I don't think
I
it was
mean,
necessary.
we know that she ain't getting it from
Yeah.
lazy ass on the couch
They
just
do have
sleeping.
3 kids.
I mean,
And their youngest is only like 4 or 5 years old, so who knows, But it's definitely more of a relaxed, boring relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler.
I
He
just like how he gets
just,
mad
like,
that nobody answers the
ready to
door when he's
go.
right in front of it.
Well, he was asleep. He was asleep for that particular part. So Billy was just going to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna flirt with this woman, and because I know this useless piece of wood behind him is not gonna, or behind her is not gonna
Well,
do
like
anything." And he's
that's
just like,
that's the thing though.
"Hey,
It's like
speaking of wood,
how did he not wake up though? Like at all from all of the rings of the doorbell and then them talking and then they were in the kitchen. Like he's just
I'm ready
man.
for season 5 where we get
He's,
the reveal that he's actually been the smartest one this whole time. He was awake during that. He knows that his wife is trying to sleep around on him,
that would be
and he knows
that.
everything, and he's got a plan.
I feel like that'd be the plot twist of the biggest plot twist of any show I've
Secretly,
watched. Probably.
Mr. Wheeler is the genius all along. He's just
If
been
that's probably
quietly watching everyone.
That's probably more of a plot twist than the first time I watched the Truman Show, because that was a plot twist and a half right there.
Yeah, but he leaves that one. He's like, "All right, I got Mrs. Wheeler in the bag," and Mrs. Wheeler's just like, "I'm gonna be thinking about that kid, that 16, 17-year-old kid, you
I mean, absolutely.
damn pervert,
She
thinking
was
about
playing
him
with her
for the
hair.
rest of the day because, yeah, well, Ted ain't playing with anything or whatever his name is. His name is Ted, right?
Yeah.
Mr.
Well,
Wheeler.
I always find it funny though is the fact that Ted is such a deep sleeper that he has a complete stranger ring the doorbell and is in his house flirting with his wife, and he has no clue
Nah, I'm
what that.
telling you, he was
So, yeah.
awake. He was awake. And we're
Yeah,
gonna get a reveal in season 5 that he's the smartest one, and he's just been silently gathering information, waiting for the time to make his move, and he's gonna make it in season 5. It's coming.
it it's very funny you mentioned
Mark
that,
my
Mitch,
words.
because we once we catch up to season 4, because also by the way, they've officially announced they've officially started production for season 5, so it's officially in the works. But
Hey.
when season 4 was coming out, there was a lot of fan theories and rumors going around that Mr. Wheeler was like a secret spy this entire time, and that's why
Well,
they've just
that's like those like Jar Jar Binks is a Sith Lord type
it's
rumors
a
where it's
very
like
far stretch, but
that's
like
kind of dumb.
there was a lot of fan theories coming out of the works. I think it was just people hoping that they would actually do something with his character other than make him just a dope. But just having you say that, it just brought that kind of to my mind. But I think we spent a little
Mhm.
too much time on Billy, so let's move on from that because
Yeah.
we definitely see more
We got a
Billy
lot to
later in the
discuss.
episode. We have a lot to cover, and we Billy will be returning shortly. But so
Billy shall return.
back to the main party, and we're in full force where everybody's kind of teaming up. It's just kind of a big information dump, and I kind of like this scene because we didn't really get a lot of character team ups in this season. It's been a lot of everybody separated and not so much working together, and a lot of people going side quests. But this is like the first time where everybody's at the table. We got Hopper and Joyce, Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, the rest of the party. They're all there planning, and that's the first time we've kind of really seen it this season. And I enjoy that because we don't, even for the rest of the show, we don't get a lot of scenes where all of them are in the same room together. But we get a little interaction between, characters we don't get to see a lot of, like Dustin and Hopper, where Dustin's making the joke about like the Demodog, and Hopper's like, "Is this really fucking important right now?" And Dustin's like, "Sorry, sir," and just stuff like that. It's just we don't get to see a lot of different characters interacting. But we finally get them kind of creating a plan of piecing together that Will can't be part of the plan because obviously he's still a spy, and they can't close the gate because they're afraid if they close the gate, that'll kill Will because he's part of the host. And you can see Joyce when they mention that kind of go into shock because she was so for like, let's close the gate, let's kill this monster, and she didn't even for 1 second think that how would this affect Will if they close the gate. And you kind of see that, you know, Winona Ryder doing some fantastic acting, just her facial expressions kind of like just drop of like, oh shit, I even think of that, I could have killed my kid. So stakes are high, and
But then it seems like she's kind of like, all right, if we're gonna do that, then we've got to just burn this thing out of him
yeah,
because
and
Will was
that's
like, I like it cold. He likes it cold.
well because Joyce was so for the whole closing the gate plan, and that's when she kind of realized like, all right, well, if we can't just close the gate right away, we need
I
to
got to be
flush
kind of
this
harsh
thing
to my
out.
kid.
Yeah, and so she's like, all right, well,
Yeah,
we gotta
because she's
figure
thinking
out a
about
way to do it.
Bob.
Yeah, oh, dude,
She's like,
I,
Bob's not dying in vain.
no,
That's right.
and
You
it's so
can't.
funny because like it's almost like I don't want to say she blames him, but it's almost like in some scenes, like the way she acts it out, it almost seems like she's mad at Will.
Yeah,
Like, you're the reason Bob is dead. And
I had a
she's just,
good, a
oh,
good thing going. I had some comfort, and you
yeah.
took that away from me.
And she definitely rages out a little bit, which I love because Winona Ryder's just a badass in general. She's like the perfect casting for Joyce. But
Yeah,
she quickly kind of looks around the room and realizes like, we're literally giving this monster everything it wants. We need to cut that shit out now and find a way to flesh it out. And that's where, Joyce, Mike, and Nancy are kind of talking things out and like, well, If it's a virus, we just gotta sweat it out, and hopefully that will free will, and then we can close the gate and everything will be fine. So Hopper comes up with the idea of basically sending them to his cabin because nobody knows where that is. So even if Will is awake, he wouldn't know where to send his little army of dem dogs because no one's been there. So we get kind of everybody splitting up, and Nancy and Jonathan have a little scene where they reconcile. Steve talks to Nancy and was like, "You should go with them." Like, I think that was a cool move by Steve because Steve's kind of just accepting his role as the adult babysitter, which I think is hysterical.
Yeah.
And it's just more of,
I love
you love Steve in this
I
because
love
Steve in this
Steve's
season's the best.
chemistry with Dustin.
Yes, but it's not even just
That is
Dustin now at this
true.
point. He's just kind of accepted the fact, like he even said, he's like, I might have been a shitty boyfriend, but it turns out I'm a badass babysitter, and it's true. And he's just fully taken on that role, and it definitely expands into season 3. But this is like the very start of it. But he just kind of has a really mature moment with Nancy where he's like, you should go with Jonathan. Like, I'm gonna stay here and take care of the kids. And then so Jonathan, Nancy, and Joyce and Mike are taking Will, who is just unconscious because they keep knocking him out with drugs, which is also pretty funny because it's just another way to keep Noah Schnapp from having to act. Which is why
Yeah, that's true.
this was the pure episode of just Noah Schnapp just being carried around and sleeping. But Hopper's given instructions to Jonathan on how to get there. And then Hopper and 11 are going on their little side quest to go to the gate. And the rest of the party are kind of just stuck there in limbo with nothing else to do. And that kind of sets up the episode. And it's almost like the end of like Fellowship of the Ring, where everybody just, it's like side quest central. Everybody's going their own direction, doing their own little side quest.
Yep.
So I think the first and most important one is to focus on Hopper and 11, because it's a pretty short arc, but a lot of cool shit happens. You get Hopper and 11 kind of having their little bonding moment driving to the lab, where Hopper opens up and basically apologizes for everything that happened and says he was being stupid. They talk about Sarah a little bit and how Sarah's gone, and that's why he's been so protective of 11, because he's afraid of losing her too. And it's a sweet little moment from Hopper kind of just finally opening up and just letting his emotions out, because he's another one. He's just a stubborn older guy and never really has had to, show any emotion before, and just never had anybody to open up to. And now he's finally doing that to his unofficial daughter. And we get them finally arriving at the lab, where we see Dr. Owens. And Nick, because I was on last episode, I didn't get to ask you, has your tone shifted with Dr. Owens? Because you've been
Not.
he's the villain of the story for the entire season. Has
Yeah.
your opinion
Yeah.
changed?
So I will say that my opinion changes in the standpoint that I still don't think he's a good guy.
Okay.
I don't think he's the main villain. I don't I don't think he's villainous, but at the same time, I guess he's more mischievous than
Okay.
anything.
Do you think
Um,
he's gonna be coming back as a villain? Is that why? Like, are you convinced he's still a villain in that sense? Because so far, like especially
yeah,
in this episode, like even towards the end, we'll get to like where he basically does Hopper a huge favor, and he
right.
helped
So
Bob out
like
last episode.
so that part so that part was cool to see. I'm not disagreeing with that, but the way that I see it is that without the situations that went on, who's to say that he would have done those things? Like to me, it's like he did those things out of service because they helped him or saved him.
Yeah.
So that's why That's why to me he's still like not a good guy, because I think without like if none of the quote demo dogs escaped and he was able to just conduct his research, like I don't think he would be necessarily like the nicest guy, because he could just go
That's fair.
do what he's been doing. But I think when given the opportunity, yes, he will help, because it's kind of like a, hey, I owe you because you saved me, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
at the same
Well,
point, I also don't know how he lived. I'm sure we'll get into that, but
I'll give no context behind it, but he does return in a future season.
okay.
You get more of Dr. Owens after this season, so that's why I'm asking. Because I'm just curious to where your standpoint is on his character.
I
Because we
still
do
think
get
he's I still think he is not a good guy.
okay,
Whether or not he'll be a main villain, maybe that part has changed, but I don't think he's a good guy.
fair enough. So we get Hopper and Levin going through the lab. They come across Dr. Owens. Who another question I have for Dr. Owens. How did he survive this attack?
Yeah, I have no idea.
They
No idea.
destroyed Bob, and it looks like he just has a little bite. It doesn't look like he's armed, like didn't have a gun or anything. How the fuck did he survive that?
Yeah.
That's another gripe I
He
have with
doesn't need
this.
one.
But like it looks like they just gave him a little love bite and then just moved on. Like there was no like obviously
Love
he was
bite.
bleeding out a little bit, but like it didn't seem like they attacked him as effectively as they did. Like we really had five of them rip Bob to pieces, and Dr. Owens is just the leftover meal of, oh, we're too full to eat you. We'll just give you a little bite and move on. That part bothered me,
Maybe they
but
were too full to eat them.
maybe. But I mean, Bob did have a lot of meat on him, so that could be the reason. But who knows?
Exactly. Bob
But
had more on his bones.
and Hopper kind of has a funny little conversation with Owens where he basically says, "Hey, this is 11. She's been living with me for the past year. Sorry, I've been lying to you this whole time. Ha ha." And it's kind of funny because it's like he Hopper realizes like the ball's in his court with Dr. Owens, and he's taking it to full advantage. Where it's like, if you make it out of here alive because I'm helping you, maybe you can, do her a favor and help her out. So Dr. Owens
Shut
is
the
at a
hell
very
up.
Dr. Owens is at a very vulnerable point, and Hopper takes full advantage of it, which it's good on Hopper. But so they kind of move on. They finally they get to the gate, and we'll hold off on the rest of this part until we cover the rest of the story arcs, because that kind of culminates to the very final scenes. So we'll shift over to the party where we just get a weird, funny scene with Dustin and I think it's Steve or Mike who basically shove the Demogorgon's body in the fridge, as Dustin calls it, for science, which I just thought was funny. It's just like you're literally at the end of the world type scenario, and Dustin's still worried about conserving his little piece for science, like his discovery, because technically the Demodogs were his discovery, and he's just so concerned about preserving it. And it's like why shove it in the fridge? I don't think it was gonna
Good
fit.
for him.
Yeah, I guess.
For science.
But
Yeah.
so we kind of just get a lot of random just interactions. They're all restless sitting around, and they kind of come up with the idea of like, hey, if we go to this little upside down hub where everybody has basically been killed and start, a little fire, we can possibly cause a distraction and help everyone else out. And Steve is completely against it. Steve just wants to kind of sit there and hang tight. And Steve, of course, always goes to the sports analogy. He's trying to be like the cool older brother. And Mike quickly shuts him up and he's basically like, look, we're on the bench. We're not even playing. Like all the major players are out. We're on the bench. And Steve's like, yeah, you're right. We're on the bench. But he's like, but we're still going to stay tight. And this is the return of Billy. And Billy shows up. And it was kind of weird how like Steve just went outside to confront him. They could have just hid, not answered the door, and maybe Billy would have went away. And I just thought it was an odd move. But like, do we think Billy would have broken into the house if nobody answered the door?
Wasn't Steve's car there?
I
So I mean,
don't
I think
know.
I think seeing a
No,
car
it wasn't
would
because I
probably
think
give
they
it
all walked
away.
there.
Oh, did that?
They all walked there because at the end of, in the last
Oh,
episode, they were
maybe they
all at the
did.
lab and they hopped into Hopper's car and Hopper drove them to the
Mm,
buyer's house. So nobody's car was there because they all left to go
mm.
elsewhere because Jonathan took the one car to go to Hopper's cabin and Hopper took his car to go to the lab. So there was no cars there.
Oh, never mind.
I think. Yeah, because after that they took Billy's car and left.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But that was my other little criticism of this episode. It's like, of all people, like, they could have just stayed in the house and not left and just hid and pulled you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses are at your house. You got to hide and make sure you don't answer the door card.
Right.
Except instead, Steve decides to do the alpha male challenge and go out and have a conversation with Billy. And it just, nothing goes right for Steve anymore. Steve just has lost all his mojo because he tries to act tough. And it's just a weird interaction between the two of them. Like, they're both trying to like beat around the bush of they want to fight each other, but they're just trying to find the right reason to do it. And Billy keeps asking, like, where's my sister? This is really weird. Like, I come to find my sister and I find her here with you. It's just weird. And Steve's like, I don't know who you're talking
I
about.
get why Billy thinks that's odd,
It,
though.
oh, it. There's definitely a lot of good reasons to why Billy is weirded out, but we both also know, like, Billy doesn't give a shit about Max, so he
No,
probably
well,
wouldn't have
Billy's also just pissed because of what happened with his dad.
exactly. So
Yeah.
he's looking just to take out his anger on somebody, but he's just waiting for proof before I think he just unleashes out on Steve. But and then of course he gets his justification by Lily going, so who's that in the window? And of course they're all just stupidly standing in the window staring at them. And I was like, come
And
on.
it's Lucas, too, which
Yeah,
Luke, he does
all
not
of them.
like Lucas
All of
whatsoever.
them.
And Lucas is always like just there waiting, almost like
It,
wanting Steve.
it's
Just like
just
he's a Zodiac killer
the
leaving
party
clues.
the party does not have good reputation with windows. Because we also get the scene in
No.
the first episode where Mike is just staring at the window at 11 and gives her away. And now we have the whole party literally just staring at the window at Billy, giving themselves away and basically ruins
And
Steve's
it's not a
whole cover
window,
story.
but that scene at the arcade where
Yeah.
Lucas tells Max about everything, and Lucas is just like, if you just stayed in the arcade, he would
Yeah.
never see you, but you
Mm-hmm.
had to just step out near the door.
Yep. And yeah, Billy's just such a racist asshole. And I don't know what his motives are, like why he hates Lucas, like if it's because he actually is racist and hates Lucas, or it's just because it just happens to be the boy that's into Max and he doesn't want Max basically having anybody to go to and escape from him to. Because I feel like Billy almost enjoys being in control of Max and having her as basically a punching bag for when he receives all that abuse from his dad. So I think that's kind of why he hates Lucas so much, because he just doesn't want Max having an escape route from him. But either way, that's just my thoughts on him. And so Billy comes in and just instantly goes after Lucas. And like Lucas stood no chance, but like Billy was just like going on him. And Lucas gives a little fight back and Billy just fucking rips on him. And that's where Steve comes in and saves the day. And that's what Steve's been doing pretty much all the season, just randomly stepping in and saving people and enjoying his role as the bodyguard / babysitter. And we get
But it
the
doesn't go well
infamous.
for him.
And it did not go well for him. Like Steve does not fight well. We saw it last season with Jonathan, and we get it this season with Billy. He's 0 for 2.
Yeah, he's gotta learn. Like he's gotta go take like Billy
Taekwondo.
Blank's like Taibo classes or something, and go learn how to fight, because my man does not throw a right hook well. Cannot slip a jab. I mean, my God, his face is just a punching bag. Yeah, no bueno.
It was a rough one. It's just funny because like they're all just sitting there, like cheering Steve on in the background, and Steve's just getting destroyed. And Max steps up and takes one for the team and just stabs Billy right in the neck. And he almost didn't go down right away. Like Billy like kind of resisted it for a minute. And the first time I watched it, I was like, is Billy really gonna like just not go down from this and just take one of them down while he's going down? But then Max just goes to the extreme and basically just starts screaming at him. I think she took, what did she take, the bat or something and slammed between his legs?
Yeah,
Like Max took it to an extreme and basically chopped his balls off in that scene and whipped him a little bit.
metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, yes.
Yeah.
But I think had she accidentally missed and gone a few inches north, it could have been literally. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy scene. And I love Max finally stepping up because like they're all best friends with Steve at this point, and nobody stepped up to help Steve except for Max, the random girl, as he made fun of her a couple episodes ago. And Max, I think, becomes officially part of the party in this scene. She pulls her weight. So we get a few.
No, she welcome to the club.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much her induction, was basically facing your fear and destroying your older brother, and now you're part of the party. Even though 11 wasn't there to see it, and 11 won't believe it. 11 will not give her voice of approval yet. So then we move on, and we get Steve waking up in the car, which was a great scene too, with Max driving. And I don't know if you got the little Indiana Jones reference in this scene. The way she was driving was the same way Short Round was driving in Temple of Doom, where she had like the little brick on the steering wheel. So I thought it was pretty funny with with how much we know they pull on Steven Spielberg references in this TV show. That was a pretty good one. And they're just giving him directions of where to go. And Steve just starts fucking freaking out. So I just thought that was a pretty fucking funny reaction. Just Steve's like freaking out. Max is trying to drive, and she just doesn't know what to do because everybody's just screaming in the car. Dustin's trying to calm him down, like petting his head. He's like, "You put up a good fight, but you got your ass kicked." And it was just a good scene. I enjoyed it.
They have good chemistry. And
It
all the
is.
kids, Steve and the kids is just, and Dustin in particular is the one that I like the most. I know I mentioned that, but you said it. In general, Steve, good with children. Ladies, that's a thumbs up.
The thumbs up.
Nancy, in case you're watching, that's a good quality. Nancy.
And just Dustin kind of be like the sympathetic little brother. He's like, he kicked your ass, but you put up a fight. Just trying to calm him down and trying to be as sympathetic as possible. Because, I mean, Steve's face looks fucked up because he took so many hits to the face.
Yeah.
And that's where Billy definitely was, superior in the fight because he went for the head. Steve's too passive of a fighter and doesn't really go for the headshots. He goes for body, and Billy went right for the head. But so we get to the dig site, at the little pumpkin patch, and they're all gearing up, and Steve's still just panicking and trying to shut them up and basically say, we need to go back. Like, we can't do this. They'll kill me if anything happens to you guys. And Dustin, kind of has that little badass line where he's like, a member of the party requires assistance, and it's our duty to provide that assistance. And basically hands Steve his bat and it's like, we're going in whether you want us to or not. And I like that from Dustin because Dustin has the habit of being that passive player where he's not a man of action, but he's always there for it. Whereas this, he's kind of putting everything on the court and saying, we need to do this regardless of the stakes, and tell Steve, like, we need your help too. So he's like, you're coming in with us. So I like Dustin kind of stepping up a little bit.
And I feel like it was kind of inevitable anyway. I mean, you know that even though they said that they were on the bench, like I just had a feeling like, they're gonna do something. They're gonna find some way to be of assistance, and that's definitely the best thing they could have done.
Yeah, it's just with the stakes this high, it's like you can't just sit around. Like, and it goes for
Yeah.
any situation, but it's like if you're just sitting there waiting, it's like you feel so useless. And it's like there's always something you can do. And they had a perfect plan. It's like, we know where we can get in, we know where it's most vulnerable. We'll go in and cause some mayhem and see what happens, and see if we can give 11 some time, because they all saw Bob get ripped to pieces. They know what's waiting for Hopper and 11 at that lab. So in their mind, it's like anything we can do to lessen that burden on them, we have to do it. And that's what Dustin kind of puts across Steve's head, and it's like, we need to do this. So we get them going inside, and just another, Dustin gets, attacked by the same thing that got Hopper, the little upside down juice. And he has a much different reaction where he's just on the ground screaming like a little girl, just screaming, "It's in my mouth! It's in my mouth!" And I have to say, Dustin has a very high pitched scream.
He does.
It's just, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like he definitely does have a high pitched scream, and like I don't know if the like did that juice like do something? Like did his lips like get like bigger?
I
Like what exactly
I
did
don't think
that
it does
do?
anything, but I think it's just because the air down there definitely is toxic to some degree. We just don't know what type of toxic, because it definitely affected Hopper's breathing, where to the point where he made a mask, and they all went down there basically putting masks on their face. So they never really explain what the air quality is down there or what's wrong with it, but getting sprayed with that stuff, yeah, it probably isn't good for you. We just don't know the stakes of as to what extreme it is. But
Is
Dustin
there
just,
another name that we can use besides upside down juice?
nope, we're sticking with that one. Because there's no other term for it. That's where we're going with. So we get them kind of going around. They start spraying stuff all over the hub. I'm guessing it was mostly gasoline or whatever spray chemicals they could find. And we just get Steve with the lighter and just throws it in. And they start running away because obviously the Demodogs are going to come running to that situation, because now the Mind Flayer knows there's someone in the kill zone, and the Demodogs go running in. And we also get another scene where, I don't know if you thought this, Nick, but that one scene where everyone got out except for Dustin and Steve, did you expect any of them to get hit? Because all those Demodogs were coming, and it was like that kind of that hallway scene where it's like death is coming for them, and Steve blocks Dustin and kind of gets in the way of them, as Steve is. But were you expecting anything bad to happen?
No, not really. No, I thought they were too important that that nothing was going to happen to the character at that point. I,
Okay.
I, I was just like, they're too much of main characters to suffer right now. Maybe in like, later season or something. But yeah, in that moment, no, it
Yeah.
did not cross my mind.
I remember the first time I watched that, I was very convinced that Dustin was gonna get killed and
Mm.
really make the stakes high.
No.
Well, the first time I watched it, because I was like, looking back, like for Steve's character arc, like Steve never cared, and he was finally just kind of getting into the like big brother mode. I was like, nothing would be more crushing than Steve basically trying to protect Dustin and not succeeding. Like that would have been an interesting arc for Steve to go down. Of like, I failed. I brought all these kids here, and I wasn't able to rescue them. That would have been a really dark arc to go down. But obviously, they chose not to, which I'm glad they did because Dustin and Steve are probably the best combination on the show. But that little tangent aside, they all get out and they realize that the Demodogs are being summoned to the gate to basically take on 11 and Hopper, who are waiting for them. And with that, we'll shift over to good old Noah Schnapp. And
Boo. I'm just kidding.
the, we get the little acting out of him in this episode in these scenes where we get Nancy, Jonathan, Joyce, and Mike basically strapping Will down to the bed, and it gives off very heavy exorcism vibes
Oh yeah.
with
The power of Christ compels you.
I was waiting for that to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, I was waiting for the holy water. I didn't see it though.
Because I don't know if either of you have seen like the original Exorcist, but that was very
A while ago.
exactly how it would happen. It's like they used rope to tie the daughter down on the bed, and of course, they turn the heaters up in Hopper's cabin to try and smoke him out. But Will slash the shadow monster is just like like basically convulsing more and just freaking out. And Jonathan is just a little bitch. Like he's just like turns his head into Nancy and starts like crying, like freaking out. It's like, Mom, you gotta stop it. You gotta stop it. I'm like, dude, your brother is possessed and possibly gonna die. It's either you smoke him out and make him sweat a little bit, or you lose your brother. And instead you turn and cry.
Joyce was thinking about Bob. So
Dude,
it's like,
Joyce was,
hey, Bob is not going to die for no reason. I'm getting this bitch back.
That's right.
it's crazy because like you see that little flashback where you can tell she's not thinking about saving Will. And that's what I was mentioning earlier in the episode. It's like I think she blames Will a little bit for Bob's death. And you see that because she
Mhm.
literally has a flashback of Bob and says, fuck you, cranks up the heat even more, and just starts screaming at, Will slash the shadow monster of like, get out of my son. And it was heartbreaking but shocking at the same time because we've never seen this side of Joyce before. We've always seen frantic and panicked and just every level of anxious possible and worried. But now we're starting to see anger. And I really enjoyed seeing this part of Joyce because it gives a little more depth to her character, I think. But Jonathan definitely was not able to handle tough mom Joyce. And we get a little bit of Noah Schnapp acting where he finally wakes up and basically gets Joyce in one hand and is holding her above him, screaming little demonic shit, just kind of like the Exorcism does. And that's kind of about it for Noah Schnapp. We don't get much else out of him, which thankfully for us we don't.
Hooray!
But it's just it was a cool scene, but again, it was very. The Duffer Brothers did a good job of just keeping it short and not having to focus too much on Will in this episode because I think they know the stakes are more on Hopper and 11 at this point. And I think it's more just for us to see Joyce reacting so negatively because she just lost Bob and she's still in that recovery phase and she's going through the loss of Bob. So I think this was more to focus on Joyce than to focus on Will's character at this point. So we finally get the exorcism completed and the shadow monster comes out and leaves because Nancy fucking stabs Will with the hot poker, which I thought was funny as hell because Jonathan is just hiding and screaming, and Nancy kind of steps in and just takes the burning hot poker and stabs Will right in the side, which I thought was a little badass moment from Nancy stepping up to the plate to help Joyce out.
Yeah, I was curious how the heat of that was a brand, right? Like that's we can
Pretty much, yeah.
right.
It's
So
a fire poker, but they
right,
left it in the fire, so it was obviously it basically branded him when she poked him with it.
right. I'm just curious that how that was the final touch that was needed because they already had so many other things on that like
Well, I
that
think
was
it was
what did it.
it was because the only source of heat is they had like basically the space heaters and all the lights focusing on Will, but there was no direct skin heat source to skin contact. So it's like the whole time it's
Yeah,
like
sure.
Will's body was basically protecting the shadow monster from the heat, and it was a pretty much a struggle fight between Will's body and the shadow monster. Whereas having that direct source of heat go into Will's skin was kind of like that surge of heat that forced it out.
Yeah, that was the cherry on the top.
Yeah. So the shadow monster comes out. Now, do we think, based off of how everything played out, do we think that piece of the shadow monster survived? Did it make it to the gate? What are your thoughts on that little bit of the shadow monster?
I
You
think
think it's still alive?
I think it ties into the final, like the final scene of the episode.
Okay. I'll have to ask Connor.
I don't know if you want me to get into that like right now, but
Yeah, we'll
think
touch on it
it's
because we're gonna go to it right now because the next scene we get is Jonathan running outside to basically radio Hopper saying, "Close the gate now. Will's okay." And we get a pretty badass fight scene with 11 and Hopper tag teaming it. And I always like the action scenes. Like that's always what I enjoy watching in any kind of show or movie. If it's got a little action, it's got to be good. And I think they did a great job with this where they had Hopper basically playing the cover man for 11 where 11 was purely focusing on the gate and Hopper's just using every gun he has on him to just take them down as to give 11 as much time as possible. And we get a really cool scene too where 11 is just using so much power that she starts levitating off the ground. And it just goes to show how powerful she is. And again, we get little flashbacks of Callie and, her talking to her about how to use your powers. They have to tie that storyline back into it. But that's the only reason they showed Callie is basically because she taught 11 how to focus your powers and really amp them up.
how to
And
harness her energy.
yeah. And basically it was she goes full Sith. It was use your pain and anger and focus it on whatever you want to attack. And 11 just unleashes everything she has to the point of when she finally closes the gate, she passes out and just collapses to the ground. But like Hopper's got the M16.
As everyone does when they do something like that.
Yeah, you never have a good fight scene without a little levitation. I mean, I've levitated a few times. It's bound to happen.
Sure.
I guess I'm not on that level. I don't think that's.
I haven't
You
done
just-
that before.
You're
Yeah,
not
I don't think
focusing your
that's.
rage enough.
I don't think that's happened to me.
Well, it's because you're too
Yeah,
nice of a
Nick.
person, Nick. You need to
Scrub
really
ass.
harness your rage.
Hmm. I'll keep that
And
in mind.
if you scream
Let
loud
the
enough, it'll
anger
allow you
flow through you.
to.
Oh no, that
Although
sounds like an absolute. Can't
that's
do
only what Siths deal with.
it.
I mean that scene would have been better with Hopper and 11 if, with all the Cali flashbacks, if they just had a quick scene of the Emperor going, "Do it, do it,
Do it.
that would have been perfect."
Do it, 11. Yeah.
But alas, they didn't do it. But so 11 finally manages to close the gate, and they had a couple cool cinematic scenes in this fight scene where they didn't rely so much on the action, but more as the visual of what was going on to kind of amplify it. Where they had the one shot with the shadow monster kind of just peeking out from behind the gate, which I thought was interesting because we've never seen the shadow monster in our reality before. We've always seen it in the Upside Down, kind of just hovering over things. And this was the first time we actually kind of see it face to face with one of our characters besides Will. And that was a cool scene to see. And then right after 11 shuts the gate, you get that scene where the camera is looking up at the little elevator shaft where 11 and Hopper are, and you just see the Demogorgon bodies just kind of falling all over the place. So I definitely think they did a great job of kind of using the camera angles to create a better picture of what was really going on and how many of them were going up against Hopper.
Yeah. And he had a lot more ammo than it
Well, yeah,
sounded like.
he was strapping the M16 and the shotgun. He had plenty of ammunition going on,
Yeah, no,
which I
I'm
thought was
just
great
kidding.
because I like
I
that's
know
one thing.
he
That's one
played
thing
that
they
part
did
well.
realistically because so many shows like the one action trope is where it's just like they have unlimited ammo. You never see them reload or switch weapons. They just keep
Yep.
firing the same gun.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that. They had Hopper run out of ammo and he had to switch to a shotgun. And I think that was a great touch because it added a little bit more realism in the stakes of Hopper's running out of ammo and there's more Demodogs coming.
Yep.
So 11 really needed to harness that rage and close that gate. Otherwise, they probably would have gotten overrun pretty quick. But with that, that kind of ties up the end of the main bulk, and then we get the 1 month later sign that comes on, and we get a great scene, a little cameo of Murray in this episode, and just I love Murray, just chilling out in front of the government lab, just waving goodbye to everybody as they roll out, and he's just kind of sulking in the success of their little operation. And we see a little mini shot of a funeral for
Murray
Barb.
was very well utilized in this season.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, they had to because it was his, it was his first season on the show, and I think they definitely set him up for. I don't know if they were planning to use him again, and obviously we know he comes back in the next seasons, but I think they wrote his character with the intention of having him come back, which is why I think they had him show up at the season finale just to kind of send them off, but let us know like, hey, Murray's actually still around and hasn't left yet. But and then we get the funeral for Barb, so we know that there's been closure, and hopefully the Barb's parents haven't sold the house yet because now they know their daughter's alive or daughter's dead but not missing. And we get a little conversation between Hopper and Dr. Owens at the little bar. And Dr. Owens basically did Hopper a favor and got a birth certificate for 11 basically making her his legal daughter, which was a solid move from Dr. Owens. And they have a quick little conversation of like, have her lay low for another year and then she can start kind of going out into the world. And Hopper asks for the one exception day, and it turns out to be for the snowball dance, which we get for the final scenes of the episode, where we get the party getting ready for it, and it's just kind of like that awkward teenage getting ready for a dance, which I never had to worry about because I never went to those dances. And Dustin is taking all of Steve's advice for his hair.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I
No,
remember because we
Damn.
had 7th grade dances together, but at least from my memory, they were very, very different.
Well, your memory
Damn.
is false, sir, because I did not go to those dances.
Maybe you weren't there, but I was there. I
You
didn't
were
do
there.
anything there. I know that for a damn fact, but
You
I know
tried
that
to be
our 7th grade
a
dances.
stud in a ladies' man in middle school, but
Wait,
I
hold on.
I accepted my fate.
Hold
I
on.
knew I was.
How would you know if you weren't there? How would you know if you weren't there? Liar.
Because I know you, Mitchell. I know you were trying to.
He brings up a good question.
I
He
could see
brings
you
up a
You were
being
good point
there.
there.
I know you were there.
I was
But
not
our
there.
7th grade dances were a lot less. Our 7th grade dances, at least from memory, were a lot less leave room for Jesus and a lot more booty sweat. From at least
Well,
from what I remember.
I don't know what kind of experiences you had, but I did not go. The only dance
I
I ever
didn't
went
have
to in
them.
school-
It was just
Hey, I don't know what kind of sweat you got going on over there, but the only dance
Booty
I ever
sweat,
went to,
obviously.
the
Obviously,
only
booty
dance I ever
sweat.
went to was my senior prom. That was it. I didn't do my junior prom.
no. You were there
I-
for we had several just like socials in 6th and 7th grade, and they were always just like booty rocking everywhere at like a billion decibels, and kids were sneaking in alcohol in 7th grade. That's what happened. And I tell that to people here.
I
And they're
really
like,
wish
what
I
the
could
hell?
go into your brain and figure out who you're thinking of at these dances.
You were
'cause I was
there.
not there.
It happened. You were there.
Did
Yes,
you
were.
Damn.
did you just miss me that much that you just recreated an imaginary Tom to hang out with at these parties?
Yes, because I needed someone with an even worse chance than me there.
Ooh.
Well, I'm
Damn.
sorry.
Shots fired.
I accepted my fate. I was not
Damn.
a ladies' man in middle school or high
I
school.
was not going to go down without a fight.
Shots fired in the hood, man.
And by fight, I mean I stood in the corner and just walked around with a few people.
No, I could see you being the Dustin, just walking up like, "Hey, shall we?" And just getting rejected.
I
left and
wish
right,
I had the
as we
balls
all
to do
did.
that, but I did not.
think
I
out
did
of
that.
the-
I did that in my 8th grade dance, and my 8th grade dance, I actually had some success, and I had my first dance ever to the least romantic song on the face of the planet.
I don't even know what that would be. I'm trying to.
There's so many of them.
I
8th
know.
grade, 2008.
I'm trying to think of the popular songs back then. I'm drawing a blank.
Was it a song by Nickelback?
No.
Oh.
No, it was a song called I Want to Make Love in This Club by Usher, and it's about having sex in public.
Nothing gets that booty sweat rocking like a little bit of Usher at an 8th grade dance.
That's right.
All right, so
But
let's get back to
let's
you
tie
know,
this back to
Nancy and Dustin.
Before we even get to Nancy and Dustin, Steve and Dustin. Steve is just going full Big Brother mode. He has fully embraced it.
Yes.
He drove Dustin to the dance. He didn't even make his like everyone else got dropped off by their moms, but no,
Nancy
Steve came through.
Nancy. That's a good quality right there, Nancy.
But you know what? We get a full reversal from the season 1 finale where we have Jonathan coming to see Nancy, and Nancy and Steve are together, and they have that awkward moment where it's like, oh, he's still here. Whereas now Steve's looking at Nancy, who's with Jonathan, and he kind of just like, all right, this is how it is, and drives off. And we have Nancy and Jonathan give a little, little flirty looks at each other. They're happy. And then we get poor Dustin just rejected left and right. And I want justice for Dustin because fucking Noah Schnapp got a date. Some random girl just comes up to him and asks him for a dance, and Dustin gets nothing.
To which he didn't even want to do.
I
Yeah,
know.
he was just
Dick.
like pass.
Yeah.
I was like, God damn. I was like,
Douche.
poor Dustin. Just I feel so bad for him every time I watch that scene. I'm like, he just wants to, just spread his confidence and have a little dance, and just gets rejected. His poor hairdo.
Dustin does get some confidence. I mean,
Well,
as
yeah.
far as pity dances go, I thought that Nancy and Dustin had a 10 out of 10 as far as that goes. You know,
And
it was
Nancy
less
definitely
pity and more
pulled
just
through.
like, here you go, kid. It's gonna get better.
And I think this was a good callback too from literally the very first episode of the show where Dustin tells Mike like, "Hey, what's up with your sister? She used to be cool and stuff like that." I think this was kind of a good coming back moment to that where Nancy comes through for Mike's friends and helps Dustin out in a bad situation. And we see a little bit of Mama Nancy coming through. So we've got Big Bro Steve and Big Sis Nancy coming through the win, and just creepy Jonathan sitting over there taking pictures with his camera. He's the creepy uncle.
Yep,
Definitely.
he's just creepy. Doesn't matter what context. He's just creepy dude.
Yep. And we get them all dancing. 11 shows up, and her and Mike have that little awkward but cute moment. And then we have a little scene with Joyce and Hopper kind of bonding outside. And Joyce is just still stuck in that. She's gone through so much trauma, not just now with Bob, but with Will too. And it's just she just refuses to leave Will's side. And I feel like it's gonna be like probably like that for the rest of his life because it's 2 seasons now of just pure trauma. And Hopper's kind of comforting her, saying, it doesn't really get easier, but they have a cute little moment. And then we got the final scene of the season 2 finale, where we have that creepy little music playing. We get the zoom out from Hawkins Middle School. And what do you know? We shift to the upside down, where we see the Mind Flayer standing over Hawkins Middle School. And that is the season 2 finale. So with that, Nick, what did you think of season 2 as a whole?
As a whole, I think I think I see why you guys are not as like big into this season. Um, I obviously haven't seen 3 or 4, but I think just given like the scores and the events that have transpired, I felt like I hate to use like bored, but some episodes were just like very meh, very meh.
Yeah.
But I will say the last episode made up for a lot, and I'm rating this one lower. Like I'm just getting that out of the way already. But I think as far as like the episode and how it was closed out, I think it closed out good, all things considered. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I could live with it.
I think with this one, they definitely learned a little bit of a lesson from season 1, where season 1 they tied everything together, but then they didn't leave any sort of cliffhanger for people to like want more. Like they revealed 11 was still
Yeah,
alive
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this one, they kind of left you off on a scene of what the fuck is going on, because obviously we see the Mind Flare over Hawkins Middle School where they all are, and you're just kind of like, well, what's going on? So
yeah.
I like how they ended it on more of not necessarily a cliffhanger, but just like a like what the fuck's going on kind of question, and what's to come for season 3, and it makes you want more. Whereas season 1 just kind of, they didn't leave that cliffhanger taste in your mouth. So definitely that was the nice ending parting note for season 2.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that, Mitchell, do you have any comments before we do ratings?
I will save it for my rating as far as my overall wrap up.
Okay. Then let's start our ratings. I'll kick it off. I'm going to give this one a 8.9.
Ooh, close to what I was gonna say.
Oh yeah? I enjoyed it. It's a good episode. I I really enjoyed the fact that we did get everyone all in the same room together for a scene. I enjoyed that we got more of a Dustin Steve relationship growing from this episode. The Just the overall excitement of the episode, I don't think was as high. Like last episode was definitely the climax of the season. Like everything was going on, and there's a lot of suspense. Whereas this wasn't as suspenseful. Like it's the last episode, you knew something was going to get resolved, so there was no really high stakes for Will's character.
Yeah,
You knew 11 being the main character, she was probably going to live because they wouldn't repeat the season 1 finale of her basically killing herself again. So the stakes weren't really as high for this season finale. So it was still enjoyable. I really enjoyed this episode. This and the last episode were definitely the main parts of season 2 I enjoyed, but as a whole, it didn't really have that big peak of excitement for me. So I'll leave it at that.
Your grade from season 1 was an 8.38, and it dropped to a 7.95
Oof,
for season 2, the average. So
makes sense.
just below that 8 mark.
The Cali episode, I'm sure, didn't help that.
No, that definitely dropped things off a bit.
But Nick, your rating?
I would say for many of the reasons that you just laid out, I was gonna go with an 8.6. I felt that the last 2 episodes were the best 2 episodes of the entire season. I don't think the way it closed out was bad, but it wasn't, I think, everything I maybe thought it would be. I think you brought up a good point that, something was definitely going to get resolved. It was just a matter of like the method.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think them going through the whole process of, hey, let's heat Will and like roast the virus out. I think that whole thing kind of like angered me after it because not that I would have thought to do that sooner, but I feel like for all the people that they have in the group, I feel like maybe that thought process of, hey, maybe we shouldn't give the monster what it wants. I think I thought that would have happened sooner. So I think
Yeah,
after that,
that is a
like,
good point
it just kind of was
because
like, really? Like, all you had to do was just, like, get him in a sauna? Like, that to me is how I felt about that. I'm like, really? Like, you could have just thrown him in a sauna and, like, that solved, like, kind of your problem? Like, I know that's an exaggeration, but that's how it felt. So I was like, really? Like, this is how
I
we're
get that.
doing this?
I like your mention of a sauna. Um, that would be a good way to flush the shadow monster out.
Yeah, like steam room. Like, I mean, like, that's like,
Yeah,
it's just kind of what it felt. So for me, it's like, how do you beat what you feel, what you think is like a paranormal shadow monster heaters like that? I don't know, like it just something didn't click for me, but it's like I get it because he's like, oh, he likes it cold, so they just
yeah.
do the opposite.
So
All
yeah,
right, so Nick, you dropped from an 8.2 in season 1 to a 7.48 in season 2. So you had a
Rough.
much bigger drop
Rough.
off
And we'll,
than
we'll we'll
Tommy.
definitely get Connor's rating when
Um,
he watches it, probably hopefully tomorrow, and we'll update that
all right,
when we start season 3.
you guys want to predict where I'm going?
We definitely will.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say an 8.82.
8.82. I am feeling a 8.55.
All right.
All right.
Well, for this episode, I'm going to go with an 8.78.
Oh,
That's where I stand on things. Tommy, you got close.
so
You
so
got
fucking
close, but
So close. So close.
not quite. This was my favorite episode of the season so far, or of the season. It's the last one, but I think a lot of that has to do with the kind of Steve getting where I like Steve as far as his character goes. I think characters started making a little bit more smarter decisions, or at least the emphasis wasn't on as much of the dumb stuff that we kind of talked about. The
Yep.
love triangle took a backseat towards the end. And I really liked the return of 11 to the group. I thought that was strong, not having her isolated for the return,
Yep.
for the end of the season after that god awful 7th episode. Bring her back into things, and I think it sets the table nicely for season 3. That I've already started watching it. I'm not gonna lie,
Yep.
and
I've already watched the
I'm a
first
big
two
fan
episodes.
of the next 2 seasons. It's
This will be
a
interesting
definite
for me
improvement.
because season 3 I've watched several times now since it's come out. Season 4 I have only watched once. That's the only season of the show that I've only seen once. So I'm excited to get to season 4 and rewatch that again. And it's very hard for me right now to not go ahead and start watching it. But yeah, season 3 is definitely
I
my
dropped off the
favorite.
most.
And I'm
Tommy,
not surprised.
you dropped off about 0.4. Nick dropped off about 0.8. And I dropped off a whole point. I
Damn.
went from 8.65 to 7.59. So I fell off hard with this season. And right now, the 3 of us, or just given where Connor's at right now, because Connor's currently at an 8.4, our average dropped from an 8.50 to a 7.76. So a definite drop off from season 1 to season 2, unless Connor comes out and gives this a 16.5, which I don't think is going to happen. This is going to be a dip.
Which
But
you and I
I
did
look forward to
predict,
seeing
and
where.
we will
Yes.
definitely see a rise in season 3. Season 3 will definitely bring things back on track.
Yes.
So,
I agree.
with
Now,
that,
there's some
I'd say we
people that
wrap
don't
things
like
up.
season 3, and season 1 and 2 are considered kind of more, because I can see where the next 2 seasons are a little bit more high budget,
Yeah.
and season 1 and 2 are a little bit more just kind of not backyard, but just smaller. They're not as
season 3
CGI
definitely
heavy.
does more world building and kind of brings more things into the threshold of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, I say we wrap this
And
season
I
2
think
up.
that's a good way to put a bow on season 2. Thank you for joining us for the first 2 seasons of Stranger Nerds. We are excited to get into the 3rd season of things, and I know that Nick and Connor don't quite know what to expect. Tommy and I a little bit more excited because we do know certain things that are coming.
Oh yes,
and we're ready to dive right back into
definitely
that. So
my
please
favorite
join us.
season of
We're
the
gonna
show.
have. Really? Okay. Well, we'll get into all of the reasons why in the next few weeks. Thank you for watching season 2 with us and listening to us spout out our opinions about it. So, for Nick Izzo, Tommy Grant, and Connor Vandemark, who will be with us shortly for season 3, we are the Jersey Nerds. This has been Stranger Nerds, episode 18, season 2 finale, and thank you for joining us.